Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the Kid Lit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So, grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of Kid Lit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Kid Lit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie, your Kid Lit loving host, inviting you back for another weekly conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking to an author about my favorite picture book genre, nonfiction picture books, a beautiful way to learn about the world and the people in it. Jeanne Walker Harvey is the author of several picture books, including Maya Lin, Artist and Architect of Light and Lines, Ablaze with Color, a story of painter Alma Thomas, and my favorite, well, maybe it's competing for a favorite, but it was my favorite, Dressing Up the Stars, the story of movie costume designer Edith Head. Today, we're going to talk about her newest picture book, Elsie B. in the Sea, the woman who painted the wonders of the deep. Jeanne, welcome to the Kid Lit Love podcast. I am so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And I am so honored to be on your podcast. I love listening to your interviews. In fact, just recently, I listened to our wonderful ambassador of Kid Lit World, John Shu's interview. And I always learn something. I'm always inspired. You ask such wonderful questions. You obviously have researched everyone carefully. So very much appreciated for what you do for the Kid Lit world, Stephanie.
Well, thank you. The people can't see, but my cheeks are blushing. They're a little right now. Thank you for that. That's so kind.
It's well deserved.
Oh, well, thank you. But the truth is, the pleasure is all mine because I adore your picture books. I already mentioned that Dressing Up the Stars, it was my favorite. It's in competition right now for the book that we're going to talk to you about today. But I actually have a collection of picture books that I have in my home and I share with others, and I call them coaching tools, right? Because I think if adults read picture books, we literally can coach ourselves into a better life. I really believe that that's how books work. And when I read your story of Dressing Up the Stars, I instantly added it to my life coaching picture book collection because it is just a beautiful book about figuring out who you are, figuring out who you want to be, learning how to trace those threads that may have started somewhere in childhood that might be able to lead you to that really wonderful kind of passion-filled kind of life. And just figuring out what you want to do. It's just such an inspiring book that I've shared it with so many people, and, with a little nudge to imagine where your threads are and what they might be. And so I just love that you put that book into the world, of course, as well as the new one that is just as amazing and I've learned so much from. So I want to thank you for that, because I know picture books are typically considered for children, not here on this podcast. We know they are for adults, and yours gives plenty of readers, both young and old. I shouldn't say old, older than children to think about.
I love that idea. I think you're so right. Well, of course, I am always reading every children's book I can get my hands on. But I taught middle school for several years and used picture books for all sorts of reasons, not just teaching writing styles, because of course they have all the literary devices in them. But as you said, the whole especially picture book biographies, which I adore, but to help them realize that these people, they were often trying to figure out, just like they are, what do they want to do? What are they passionate about? What could they do with this passion? And that it's not always an easy road to follow one's passion.
Right.
Perseverance, patience. So I love that, what you said about sharing books with all ages.
I'm glad. I'm glad. And, you know, Edith was a new person for me to learn about. And quite honestly, so are most of the others. And so was LCB. So I love that you have given people, not just a biography of, let's say, a typical person someone might expect to know about, but people who have done amazing things that we might not know. And it just makes our world a little bit bigger to know about them. So I would love for you to start with a little bit about you and why this genre, why nonfiction, why biography, and how do you choose which people to bring to life in this way? That was like
Oh,
4 questions, but
they're all great questions. I think I was one of those children who went to the library constantly with my mom, returned to the home with a huge stack of books, and wanted my name on the cover of a book someday. So I've been writing for a very long time. It took quite a long time to be published, but that's another lesson to share with children, that you keep doing what you love. And I'm sure I would have still been writing even if I'd never been published. And I've had lots of job hats. I've been on a high-tech attorney, and as I mentioned, a middle school language arts teacher and writing teacher, and of course, a mom of 2 boys, and all that entails, which is wonderful. And when I was a middle school teacher, my first book was published. So that was thrilling. And I love picture book biographies, particularly because I think it ties in with my work as an attorney, in that I like to research a lot of the details. And but my passion is art. And I love modern art, particularly. I was a docent at the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco for about 20 years and led tours for children, school groups, and sharing artists and the idea that everyone is creative, has different ways of showing their creativity, and everyone has a choice to like what they like and not like what they don't like, and bring what they have, their own experiences and ideas, to that art. And so I particularly like to write picture book biographies about creative people. And another one that was Romare Bearden, and his art was exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art. His paintings are full of stories that children connected to. And there wasn't a book about him. And as you said, I like to bring to the forefront these people that aren't famous, and the ways they've all contributed to our world, to our way of viewing the world. So it's a pure treat to just get immersed in any topic. And there's lots of ones that I've worked on that haven't become published, but it's so much fun to just dive into reading about them. Mhm.
I love what you said about creativity, because I think, kids are naturally creative and embrace that natural creativity. And what I have found, at least in my own self, is that as we grow, sometimes we lose that creativity, or we think we don't have time for the creativity, or the thing that always happens to me is I'm not creative, right? I can't do that. I can't do this or that. And learning about people, and they're all creative, but in different ways. That's the theme that I have loved finding in your book. Some of them are overtly creative, right? They are artists, but others are creative in ways that I personally might not have originally thought of defining creativity. And it just awakens something in the reader when you read that, like I want that. Maybe I could have that. Maybe what if I did dream about that? And that to me is like it's like a little butterfly feeling when especially when I've read your two most recent books. It's like, oh, oh, that's what that could feel like. They are having the time of their lives in this story, and we could do that.
I love that. For example, when I shared the Edith Head book down at the Academy Museum in Los Angeles before Oscar week, the museum put on a reading. So I did the book reading and talk, but then they had a costume design workshop for all ages. They had a huge stack of fabrics and cool, buttons and extra things. And then they let people do costume design. And let me tell you, the adults in there, they came in saying, I've never done anything like this. I can't. The kids were saying, Mom, we've got to leave at some point. So it was really great to see that creativity just spark because they thought it was available to them too.
It's possible. Your books are full of
Mhm.
possibilities. That I think is a good message. Now that I think of it, that comes from them.
That's nice.
So let's talk specifically about your newest book, LCB in the Sea, The Woman Who Painted the Wonders of the Deep. And I just want to start by saying, I had no idea. I had no idea who this woman was, that long ago she'd be diving into the sea, and learning how to paint underwater and then bringing these beautiful worlds to us. It was such fun to learn about her. And so I'd love for you, in your own words, to kind of tell readers kind of a snapshot of what that book is about. Obviously, it's about her life, but a little bit of what it's about and why her? Why pick her as your next picture book biography?
Well, I'm always seeking to find out about creative people. And I came across this amazing article by a scientist, Dr. Edith Witter, and she is a rock star scientist who's done TED Talks and explored the undersea world. Well, she had found about Elsa Bostelmann because there were a treasure trove of recently discovered paintings she had done. So this article just lit up my world because I thought, oh my gosh, this is combining an undiscovered, unknown artist, and then the STEAM connection with bioluminescence and the color spectrum and oceanography. So when I started researching, of course, there wasn't a whole lot about her, but she, once the wonderful Library of Congress helped me, the Bermuda Museum, Edith Witter. And so Elsa Bostelmann went down into the water and painted herself, wearing a copper helmet with the air hose to the boat. So this was before scuba equipment. So I remember she was almost 50 years old and she was a fine artist. She had trained in Germany. She'd married an American who they came to New York. That he died and she was a widow and raising her daughter in New York City, but she was always following her passion of painting, particularly the natural world. And then when she was about 50, she applied for a job with a renowned scientist, William Beebe, who was an explorer around the world. Well, his newest adventure with the New York Zoological Society was exploring underwater off the coast of Bermuda. Now, remember, this is the Depression too. So the underwater world was unknown. It was the idea like space travel became in the 60s. This was a new, exciting place that people had no idea about. And he was excellent at explaining and writing about what he discovered, these bioluminescent, never before seen creatures. But that wasn't enough for the world to understand how amazing these creatures were. And so she painted in great specific detail these beautiful, beautiful creatures. And a lot of them are kind of spooky, creepy, which kids will love, of
Yes.
course. And they were published with his words in in National Geographic in the 1930s, twice, two different articles. Opened up the world of the deep for people, and many current oceanographers have mentioned that they had seen her um, growing up, or um, and it inspired them. So I want children to know that even though William Beebe has been the famous explorer who made a huge contribution, without her work, his words would never have carried the
Right.
same weight. So every person is important in these famous expeditions or discoveries.
Yeah. The thing that really blew my mind, I think, as I was reading the book was, that she literally created a new underwater palette. Like there were colors that were just different underwater versus on land. And she actually figured out, going from just a sketch, an underwater sketch, to painting underwater to be able to
Yes,
really see these colors. And I thought, my goodness, this is way back
yes.
when doing these most amazing things. It just truly blew my mind that this happened and that nobody knew about it.
Right, exactly, exactly. And just what you're touching upon was so wonderful, in that she really did two types of painting. Because one I mentioned, which was the detailed, she did these back on land in in the lab off of the island in Bermuda. But then she also herself went down, as we said, and painted to try to learn about the color spectrum, because we know that when the deeper one descends, the certain colors fade out. Particularly, she noticed her red bathing suit, which is the first color to fade to a gray. So she was doing, instead of plain air, it's plain water. So she that was very helpful for her to understand what colors might be occurring when he was descending at different levels.
Yeah.
So it's great, wonderful scientific tie-ins.
Yeah, you could go down multiple rabbit holes, right? You could go down the color palette rabbit hole. You could go down the early diving and what that looked like rabbit hole. So many different areas. I could imagine, well, I know because I did it. Like if you read with Google, and be like, wait a minute, what about this? Let me see that. And the fish themselves, there were some pretty wonderful looking, interesting looking things like the exploding scarlet shrimp, the needlehead, the scarlet arrow worms. I thought, oh my goodness, yes, kids will be all over those new those new things that they likely have not heard about in the
Exactly. And the whole concept of bioluminescent, that these are glow in the dark creatures. I mean, can
yes,
you imagine how exciting it must have been? They had no idea. They thought, well, we may go down and not see anything in this bathysphere, and plus the incredible danger that whether the scientists would live going down in the bathysphere. But
right,
then to see these magical, and
yeah,
that is what I want to incite, that love of discovery, of exploration, and our oceans. And as Edith Witter said, we need to help people know that they can make a difference, and not the gloom and doom. And of course, children are amazing at being advocates of what they care for and what they believe should happen. So
do you want
it's
to say more about those extras? You have the author's notes and some extra information
sure,
in the back about just that, ways
sure.
ways that we can take care of the ocean. I'd love for you to talk about why you wanted to include that.
Oh, I am huge advocate of back matter, partly because I
Love it.
always have so much more that I've researched that I can't fit into
Right?
the few pages of a picture book. Um, and so we've included discussion about the underwater color spectrum, the concept of a fathom, which is just a cool underwater
Yeah.
word meaning outstretched arms at 6 feet. Math conversion table from fathoms to feet to meters, the incredible science of bioluminescence condensed in a few paragraphs. But as you said, I hope that sends children to finding all the
Yes.
books and information about bioluminescent, because it is truly a magical, and the reason that it exists for helping them, these animals, seek food. And so it's then I have some sources and my author's note of why I was inspired. I always work hard to include a photo of the person, and here's one. There weren't very many available, but it's a great one because Edith Witter is in her studio painting with her microscope and her sample of of some fish that was trawled, scooped up from the bottom of the ocean, and then some of her original paintings from published in National Geographic. And I myself was able to acquire those 1930s National Geographics, and which was just such a kick to see, and just what was happening in the world then
Right.
besides this, and then to really see how this must have been an amazing article, and her paintings to see at that time.
Well, listening to you speak, knowing your previous picture books and listening to you speak about your reasoning, your rationale, your process, like I think anybody listening can tell that you are kind of the epitome of a lifelong learner. It seems like you are constantly on the look or the hunt for just knowledge, information, things to share. And you're nodding, which people can't see, but I'd love for you to talk about that and just your process of kind of pulling together what you need to pull together in order to create a picture book like this.
Oh, that's a great question. I am such a believer, just as you said, in nonfiction, in the knowledge and the what children and what I can learn too from my research. But I'm a huge believer in finding primary sources. So I want the person's words in an interview, in maybe film clips, and it's not easy. And sometimes I give up on someone because I can't find enough primary sources. I don't want to write about what someone else has said about that person. And fortunately, with her, I was able to track down, with the help of the Library of Congress, she wrote articles herself about her adventures and included one sketch of herself in the water, and how magical, what a fairyland, those were her words of when she first descended. So, and then I just gather and gather and gather all this information and reading, and it's not a very tidy process because I never know what thread I want to follow in the story. So I just try to, as much information as I can. And I'm probably pretty slow, but it's a luxurious process of just absorbing as much as I knowledge as I can about the person. So
Yeah.
it's
And listeners can't see, right? We can see each other because we're chatting. Listeners are just listening to the podcast, but you have a joy on your face and a brightness when you talk about this, when you talk about your research. It really is exciting to see on this
oh,
end because I'm thinking you must have such fun all day long, all
I
these
do.
people pulling this together.
I do. I want to work every day. And sometimes people say, maybe you need to not just we get out of your writing world,
Right?
but it's pure joy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then now to be able to be back in classrooms and in person with children, it just
Right.
lifts my soul and brightens my heart to be around children. They're so smart. They're so thoughtful. They care. They're funny. They're fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the joy definitely comes through on the pages. That's for
Thank
sure.
you.
And
Thank you.
we didn't even talk about the beautiful illustrations that match. They are gorgeous and paired beautifully with your words and what you're saying about the color palette, about the bioluminescence. It's a beautiful fit together.
I think so too. I couldn't be more thrilled with Melody Stacy's artwork. She is a fine artist in the UK, and her work for this book was gouache, watercolor, pastels, and colored pencils, and they are stunning. And I just want to be immersed in her world of that she's created. They're so evocative of the magic of the exploration, and she did a lot of research. And I also sent her the National Geographic magazines for accuracy too, but she did a lot of research of spot on of all the details. But it's just mainly the beauty and her composition, and it's incredible. She was chosen, as you know, the picture books illustrators are always chosen by the art director and the editor, not by the author. And Amy Novesky at Cameron Kids Abrams was the editor, and she had also edited, and she's an incredible editor and also actually a good friend. And I dedicated the book to her and my sons. Um, and she had edited another book called Beautiful Useful Things, What William Morris Made, and a textile designer that Melody Stacy had illustrated. And those are gorgeous illustrations also. So I knew right from the beginning I was in good hands. The text was in good hands. And of course, the magic is so much bigger when the illustrations. It's such a exciting pairing of an illustrator author, and and I always feel like somehow my text is just much more. It's just it's so I so appreciate illustrators, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is they just make the magic happen. And I
Yeah.
wish all authors credited illustrators more, because it's an equal partnership.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, those pictures, you know, the feel of your book with your words and her pictures, it's very immersive. Like you really do feel like perhaps you might be, underwater with them. But I just got this sense of calm. Like I literally was down there kind of taking it all in, but without the worry of if my air hose was going to fall if I turned my head kind of thing. It was a very calming, inviting experience. And that you're right, that only happens when the author and illustrator are so beautifully paired together. And this definitely was that pairing.
so lucky. I'm just thrilled by these illustrations. I look at them constantly, so, and see more little details that she's included.
Yeah. Yeah. You always miss something, right? There's always something you can
Right,
go back and something that you can find.
right.
I do want to say one other thing about the book, and I don't know if you have ever gotten this comment before, or maybe it's just me because I am an individual reader kind of approaching it. But what I loved that really struck me was that this was a woman who wasn't a little girl who had it figured it out, right? She was later in life and found her thing and did it then. Didn't give up on the dream. That really resonated with me of, oh, there's always time. There is always
Absolutely.
time to figure it out. And that just jumped right off at me, as well as the fact that we can be multiple things. We can work and we can be a mom and we can paint and we can contribute to science. It was just, this like girl power. So strong.
Love that. I love that. I think you're absolutely right. She was still being a great mom to her daughter who was a teenager in New York. There were friends and family taking care of her. Great role model to
Yeah.
go off on this adventure and make such a difference. And she also worked in the to supported herself and her daughter with later by doing more illustrations, and she designed some textiles, wallpaper. So absolutely, I'm a big believer in many hats. I've worn many hats, and why not? We can.
Yes. Why not? That I think is another way to capture the spirit of your books. Like, why not? Why not believe that you could do, whatever that little creative seed is for you, like it's there. It's planted when you read that
Yes.
book. And for me, I can't get it out in a good way. It's just wonderful what your books have
Yes,
done.
you are. That's wonderful. I love what you're saying.
Good. So, because of your lifelong learning, because I imagine you are constantly pulling tidbits and watching and listening and maybe even eavesdropping, who knows how you get your inspiration. Do you always have a person or an idea in the queue that you're just kind of bouncing around and always working with? Are you allowed to talk about stuff like that?
Absolutely, I always do. You should see my piles of research books that are off camera of many different people. But recently, just this week, I've been working on final edits of a book that will be published summer of 2025. And it is called The Glass Pyramid, a story of the Louvre Museum and architect I.M. Pei. And it's published by Athenaeum Books for young readers, Simon and Schuster, and illustrated by Kwa Lei. And I've seen her sketches so far, amazing. And of course, her work is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful in other books that I've seen. And I've been working with the associate editor, Christy Choi, who is just a delight. And we just, because of course I love to wordsmith. It's sort of like my clay, I guess. And just to play with the word, I can
Oh, I love
spend
that. I love
hours
that
just
analogy.
maybe is it better to say the mayor of Paris or the Paris mayor? And what other words can we use that have the nice P sound? And she totally is very patient. See, I have another P word with my ideas. So I've just spent about the last week and a half finally editing some of the comments from the other people at the publisher that review it. And sometimes I do like to write in fragments occasionally. And it really is hard for the copy editor to let me do that. And
Right.
but then I plead that, it's fine. I know it's a fragment, but it's okay if we view it in more of a lyrical fashion and to say there is something. I don't need that there is. I just want to get to the
Yeah.
heart of it. And Christy's very patient with me, playing with words. So
Yeah. I
it's
love that because really that is a picture book. It is saying really big things and as few words as possible. So they are on the page combined with the pictures that the reader can really bring to life.
exactly. And even line breaks. I'm very conscious of line breaks because it will be read out loud. And I want the reader to pause at the end of that line. Or if they're reading it, if an adult's reading one, they still will pause, just as with any poetry. And it adds so much more emphasis. And I think I could drive people crazy though. And I said, could we please just break that? But then it's going to take up more space. Well, could we? So it's a wonderful partnership of many people, all the copy editors, the art director, the designers, who's picking the font, the type of paper, the size of the book. And then, of course, the whole marketing and support team. So it's quite a collaboration, and it's really exciting to be part of that team.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting on my end to be able to talk to people about that process because for so long as a reader, I definitely took for granted the bazillion things and people and questions and concepts and decisions that go into putting this beautiful book into my hands to enjoy. And I think that's been my favorite part about this whole process of podcasting and talking to authors is that backstory just brings it to life in a way that it can't, without it, without that context and the appreciation and the respect and the adoration of the book just is magnified.
I love that. I love that. And I didn't know either until I'd had a book published. And it is truly an incredible world, the publishing world and what they do. And then the supporters such as you. I mean, that's and the literacy advocates.
Yeah.
So it's all and the teachers and librarians and
It's a village. It's a good
it's a
ish
village.
village.
And they're always great people in the village.
Yes, book people are the best people, but there's something even more special about children's book people. I can feel
True.
it. Yeah,
I'm
I
not I have no problem saying I'm biased.
that's
Yes.
right. We're preaching to the choir too, and so everybody is
Exactly.
nodding
Yeah,
their head and agreeing no matter what they are doing and multitasking.
right.
Oh, well, it has been such a wonderful time chatting with you. Again, like I think listeners will feel the happiness and the joy and just the contentedness I think that you have of all of this. And I do hope they will head to your backlist as well as grab this new book that you have coming out now. And I'd love for you to share where's the best place for readers to find you online?
Um, on my website. So www.jeannewalkerharvey.com. That'd be wonderful. And I do have a lot of extra activities that are free to download and print out that children it really can spark their creativity. I love hearing from readers, parents, teachers, librarians. If you have any thoughts or anything struck you, or you have ideas, or just, I love that too. So we love so much time spent by ourselves. We love connecting whenever. So
Yeah.
talking to you, Stephanie, was just such a delight.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'm so glad you mentioned that on your website because I did want to bring that up. Like, it's not for listeners, going to our website isn't just finding a blog post, on how you might use this book. There are resources, beautifully creative, beautiful looking resources on how to bring the book to life. So I'm so glad you mentioned that because I wanted to make sure. So it's, most of us listening are educators and librarians who definitely appreciate those resources right at our fingertips. You've done such a beautiful job on those as well as the books.
Thank you. And when all the other resource there is for many years, I've been reviewing picture book biographies exclusively. So many books, and they're just short snippets, and then I always pull out a tantalizing taste of some writing that I think is extra special, and then a something more, usually from the author's note or back matter that's intriguing. So
Yeah,
that's a resource.
it is. And we mentioned how your book could take us down different rabbit holes. I got lost in the rabbit hole of your reviews. I spent far too much time going through such wonderful titles. So
I'm
I
flattered.
appreciate that. Yeah, and I
Thank
imagine,
you.
as a writer, writers read. And so it's just such this beautiful back and forth on your website of your books and your interest in wonderful things, but also you can see where you are in it as the reader who just loves the whole process too. It's
Very much.
very clear and evident.
Right. We are so lucky of of the incredible wealth and range of children's literature right now.
I know it is a good time, isn't it?
Really
The
good.
more books, the better. I've said not too
Yay.
episodes ago. The more books, the better. Well, thank you again. This was such a fun conversation. I so appreciate you took the time to come on. I'm so excited to help you launch your newest book into the world. And I'll make sure to put all of the ways to reach you and your website and links to your books directly in the show notes.
Oh, I'm truly appreciative. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I'm looking forward to more of your interviews. So to
And I'm
hearing about
looking forward to more
others.
books.
Slow but sure.
Yes. Well, thank you again. And listeners, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Kid Lit Love podcast. And I'll see you here for another one next week.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Kid Lit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of kid lit love. Thanks for listening.